We've got a super fascinating guest on today. Her name is Jaimie, and she's a property developer. And what she does is she takes disused buildings, commercial space, unloved property, converts them, and then she works specifically, or is looking to work specifically, in this social housing type sector. So helping those people that are a little bit vulnerable. So a bit close to my heart because we do something similar to that. We're going to be looking at Jaimie's backstory. Property development's not the only thing she does, so stay tuned for a little bit of that as well. And we're going to have a look at her whole journey, really how she's ended up where she is, and then we're going to look at what her next 10 years looks like and what kind of problem she's going to have reaching those goals. But don't forget to subscribe and like to the channel, follow us on the social media, and with that said, we'll get stuck into the podcast. Right, everybody, we're here today with Jaimie from JLH Homes.
JLH Homes, and it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah, because it's two H's.
There's two H's, I know. There's a reason for that. I'll explain to you in a minute.
JLH Homes Limited. And we're going to have a sort of bit of a chat about your business and what you do and kind of that sort of thing. And then your goals and really what's going to stop you from getting them, and see if we can figure some things out. So just for the audience, give us a kind of elevator style pitch, 60 seconds, or, you know, you have a bit of flexibility on that, but about what
my most nerve-wracking part of this whole interview is trying to fit everything in 60 seconds.
You haven't got to stand up in front of people.
Okay, well, I know this is going to go to more people though. Okay, so if I was to just tell you what JLH Homes is doing right now moving forward, and we can talk about history another time. So JLH Homes is a property development and investment company that I run, and I own and I run, that works with investors to create good returns for investors, but all the while with a sort of a community spirit, shall we say. So our predominant MO right now is to either create HMOs or to use a commercial space that's being unused, and to create residential property from that commercial space predominantly for refinance and for the social housing market. So that is what we are leaning into quite heavily right now. That's everything that I'm doing is leaning towards that with JLH Homes.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, you're repurposing space of whatever nature, to kind of deal with the social housing kind of market, really.
Exactly. Well, just the housing market in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that across the southeast primarily?
It is the southeast. Yeah. I have got property in the north, which I was warned off not doing at the time, but it made sense at the time because it was a lower investment, and it just gave me so much experience in converting. It was residential to residential, but I was converting houses into apartments, completely separated. So full planning, full building regs, you know, dealing with full construction firms and things like that. So even though it was a smaller equity, a capital investment, it had all the experience I needed to really get going. So it made sense at the time, and it has made good money. It's just that I'm actually selling off those properties at the moment to make my business a little bit more streamlined and structured, less stressful, because I've got a lot going on. So now it is. We're just working sort of. If I was to give you a rough estimate, east and west Sussex, mostly West Sussex. Yeah. I'm not saying I wouldn't come to Brighton. I would. Predominantly looking more sort of Worthing over to Chichester, and you know, on that band on the south coast below Horsham. But that's not to say I don't look in Brighton, Portslade and all of that. I do. Yeah. So south coast predominantly.
And numbers wise, you don't have to disclose accurate things.
What we have,
in terms of what you do or own or
so I started in 2017, and that was just the first. I owned a property already that I bought when I was 20. Yeah. And I'd gone through lots of personal development, which made me realise, actually, I think the way I want to go is property. I mean, there's more of a story to put behind all of that, but I think the way I want to go is property long term. So I started to sort of think, what can I do with this one little property? What can I do with it? Because I won't live here forever. And then I looked for investment. I looked for all the different property books, and I started to sort of think, well, how can I expand? What's another way? Realising from Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then lots of property education is another way.
Have a good bit of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing what it does for you. It really does convert your brain into realising you don't have to work for the man your whole life and just rely on that pension that will never come. And sorry, now let's get back to the question. So from 2017 to 2020, or even 2019 really, I went on a big sort of development and investment sort of stampede.
Yeah.
Started in Huddersfield buying these 2 little houses that were just absolutely ruined and no one wanted to live in them, right in the centre of town. Converted them into 6 apartments for student accommodation. So they're completely 6 separate apartments. There were 6 apartments there. And then the ball was rolling and everyone could see what I was doing. I was using private investment. I was creating structures, and I was as in SPV structures, joint ventures.
Yeah.
And then I was like developing all these houses, and people saw. So then I had people contacting me. Oh, well, I'm selling a flat and I haven't been able to sell it. And people going, oh, well, I've got some money and I'd like to invest. And it sort of snowballed a little bit. And I had a little bit of my own money, but it wasn't massive. And I didn't really put a lot of my own money into any of these deals. People were coming that they had money, and people were coming that they had property, and I was like, whoa, let's see.
Yeah.
I didn't have my cookie cutter structure, which I use that word a lot now because I'm really trying to drive into it. I didn't have a cookie structure that this is what I buy and this is only what I do.
Yeah.
I sort of sporadically invested in, oh well, that flat's available, it's a good deal. That's available, that's a good deal. And then I sort of did with it whatever would work. So I created holiday lets, buy-to-lets, student accommodation. So I didn't have massive portfolio, but what I did have was quite diverse, which in one way was good for COVID because I didn't fall under the bus in COVID. Actually because it was diverse, we had no issues over COVID. It was actually, we had not a bad time, so it was very, very fortunate. But we created 12 lettable units, shall we call it, so 6 apartments, a house, and then and all these sporadic little flats and annexes, so 12 places that were being let in different manners in those 2 years. Sorry, that was a really long way of getting to that, wasn't it?
So your strategy's been to kind of JV with people of some nature.
Of any nature.
Yeah, and then basically to do a kind of cookie cutter type thing for you now would be to buy a house, chop it up into 4, 5, 6 flats or whatever it is.
Or a HMO,
whatever works. And then you would pay off your investor, and then you would retain that as part of your portfolio.
Exactly. So that is one way. So we can work with that investor on a loan agreement situation. So they the investor, every investor will come to me and say, they'll say what returns they would like. If I can find a deal that will work for those returns, I'm happy to give whatever the investor needs or wants from that money. Yeah. They may not always be that, because some investors do come to you if they're slightly less sophisticated, not an unsophisticated investor, but maybe a slightly less heavy-hitting investor. They might want like a really big return for their money. And it might be quite hard in the southeast to find a deal that's going to give that. Yeah. So we might have a discussion. Well, actually, this is what I can do with this deal. I found this property. This is the interest rate that I can give you. Or would you like to come in on an equity basis? Yeah. Which obviously then, you haven't got your solid 12 to 18%, let's say, for instance, now, or that you want, because you really want like an 18% investment, which is quite, it's quite a lot of money. Yeah. And maybe we can't get that in a refinance and get it out to you. But when you come on an equity basis, and we can see what we can do, and maybe it'll be over a longer period of time. So we can work with an investor however they want to work. We can go debt basis, equity basis. But it really, you've summarised it quite well there, that if I can work with someone on that basis where they've got a bit of money, they've got no time, they want to maximise their money, then that's what I'll do. Yeah.
So the perfect approach is to then pay them back and then
retain the property,
and then let it out through a housing association of some nature.
It's actually quite a new company based in the Worthing area that are working, that are growing really quick. And they are working with the most vulnerable sector of our society in housing through the council. And so they are working through the councils, but they are a separate company. But they're offering massive levels of support and key workers and safety teams. And what they're doing is a little bit above and beyond just what the council can do. Because obviously the council is so stretched. So we need these companies in between. Well, I think, maybe there's going to be lots of different opinions on this, but what I believe they're doing is amazing, and what I'm watching, how I'm watching them grow, and the support they're giving to each vulnerable individual that they're getting housed is phenomenal. So this is who I would be leasing to them, basically.
I don't know about yourself, but we do a lot with the social housing sector of a slightly different nature. We're kind of operating more on a kind of individual basis rather than letting like a whole unit. But it gives me like an enormous like sense of happiness, like trying to help those people. Exactly. And I know like landlords in general, they get the bad rap.
Such a bad rep, it's bad.
I'm not going to lie to anyone, we're still making money out of it.
Of course we are, it is for profit, it has to, because otherwise why would anyone do it?
But like to help someone that's fallen on hard times of whatever nature. And like I think we in the pre sort of chat we mentioned about the definition of homelessness. And that can be really anybody from, I mean, like sofa surfing, sleeping in your car, or like for us, we get an awful lot of, we try to save people before, like, so it's like a typical, I know it sounds a bit sexist, but like mum with 2 kids and the man's walked off or something, that's like quite...
Or domestic abuse or anything like that, you know, there can be loads of reasons, can't they,
And they're just before they go into like a bed and breakfast, which to me is kind of like being homeless anyway.
It is, I mean, it totally is. I mean, it really is. And even that, you know, they're going to be crammed in a tiny room. And the thing is, I've got friends that have been in that situation for a long time because they couldn't find housing. And right this second, I have a family member in South Wales who is rough sleeping due to drug addiction.
Yeah.
A direct family member. And we've got a huge network of family who has tried to help him. He's got all of my family, we're a really close family, and everyone has tried to help him, but he is in a point in his life where he can't accept that help, he doesn't know how to be helped, and it's really sad. And so I can see now firsthand, because I always used to see a rough sleeper in the street, and if I chat to them, because I said, well, you know, I go out and I do sort of gift dropping and giving clothes and stuff like that quite a lot. My husband and I used to go out and do as much as we could. And we would chat to them and we'd sit and they'd have direct family in the area, and it really confused me. Like, how have you got family and you're sleeping on the street? And now, literally right this second, I have a family member, direct family member, quite close, sleeper on the street. And now I can see. And it's taken me this long, and it's taken that for me to see that it can happen. And actually, if you don't have these companies, like the company I'm working with, Base One, they are they are a profit company. But if you don't have them doing what they're doing and supporting as a third-party person outside of the families, then these people are going to stay on the streets for a long time, because people really find it hard to accept help and advice from family. Yeah. It needs to be somebody else, and they need to hit a level really where they're in desperation, where they're ready to accept that help. And it's making people understand that actually a lot of the time, whatever these people are going through, which will be obviously a mental health issue a lot of the time, is actually accepting help from family is not the way. Yeah. It's really hard. It's a really hard concept. They've got to want to accept it, and a lot of people don't want help from their families, or they've already attacked their families, robbed from their families, you know, or you know, they've got children, so they cannot be accepted back into the house because they're dangerous. Oh, there's so many things that can make a person end up in this situation. But also outside of that, there's lots of people without any issues. They haven't got any drug issues, they haven't got any issues, they've lost their job, their tenancies come up, their house is being sold because of the new legislations that are coming and making it harder for landlords to keep stuff, all this stuff that's coming in is making landlords harder to keep their homes. They're having to turf people out to sell their homes because they can't afford to keep these homes, to let them to these families. So then now these families are becoming homeless. Yeah. So it's I don't know, it's just catch-22,
I think it's a sector that's like grown massively over the last few years and
become
a lot more acceptable. Like there was a day where people would really kind of snub that kind of sector, if you like. Yeah. But from like, obviously we're a business show, but from a profitability point of view, you're working with an association that you know assists with the rent or whatever, so it's fairly stable from that. So it allows the numbers, and it allows you to then be like, okay, I want to help these people because it's going to be sustainable as a business, but actually you're also ticking that like corporate responsibility stuff of like and actually really helping people.
It is, yeah. And I think, to be honest, I would say, the way you said that, corporate responsibility, I would actually say we're not even in a position where it's a corporate responsibility anymore. It is, but I would say it's just a social responsibility. And for, you know, I said to you earlier about all of my diverse, sort of small but diverse portfolio, because I'm not going to say I've got a huge portfolio. It's just a diverse one. Yeah. What I do have is I do have some holiday lets in there, and they're in this local area. And actually, I've had a real big kick in the butt of conscience. I don't know what to say. What would you say? My conscience will not allow me to continue with that. And even though they are great little properties and they make money and they've been year on year making a hell of a lot of money for the size of property they are, I'm actually and you know, one of them I've owned since I was 20. It's like my baby. That's on the market right now, having lots of viewings because I'm going to, you know, pay off the mortgage, and then whatever the money I've got left is being invested into commercial resi or a HMO for social housing purpose, because I don't want to keep removing property from the local area that could be used to house these people. that are really struggling to find anywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've had a little thing kicking my butt of conscience now that I'm like, no, I think it's time for us to restructure and start working into this.
Because I think sometimes you have to trim the bush, so to speak, and redeploy money in the correct area. Whether that's like just because you're doing that because of a business, or you're thinking actually what I can do is make a real difference.
Exactly, and it's both. It is both. But this 1-bedroom property that I'm actually selling right now obviously turns over, it grosses £30,000 gross rent from a 1-bedroom property. Anyone can see why you wouldn't do that. I'm allowed to do it because of the area it's in, and so it's great. But, the money I've got tied up doing it is not massive. Yeah. But if I can then use that to go and buy a small commercial property that I can convert into 4 studio or 1-bedrooms, I can house between 4 and 8 vulnerable people in that house. I'll probably turn over the same amount. I will probably profit the same amount from the 1-bedroom. So my financial situation won't change on that property probably once my costs, because obviously I'll have a huge mortgage on it and everything. There will be huge costs, huge amount of labour going into it. There will be a massive issue. But if I can repurpose that money and a bit of investor finance it'll probably take as well, and house 4 to 8 vulnerable people at the same time, why would I not do that?
Exactly. And I think also from a business point of view, it does lessen your risk. Like you mentioned about COVID and having a diverse portfolio. I'm a big fan of not having all your eggs in one basket. During COVID, we didn't have to worry about rents because the council effectively paying the rent. So, I know a lot of my colleagues and friends, they were looking in their agreements going like, what job do they get? Oh no, they're a barber. The rent's probably not going to get paid for the next 6 months. So it's a good stability, but not putting all your eggs in one basket is like, a really good way of kind of diversifying, I think. And if you're doing a bit of everything really, then, that's a good kind of strategy, if you like. So tell me quickly, I always ask the podcast guests what they were like as a child, but I suppose, as you know, because you watch some of them, but I suppose it's kind of what I'm interested in is like from your kind of, I suppose your like teenage years all the way up to where maybe how you've got into what you are doing now, because this isn't the only thing that you do as well. So
no, it's not. No, it's an interesting. Okay, right. So let me try and square this away. If I just quickly out to when I was really little, and it was a very chaotic childhood, shall we say, when I was little. My mum had me very, very young and worked her little butt off, bless her, if I'm allowed to say, but she really did. She was an amazing mum from a very young age, and she was very entrepreneurial. She was a singer, and then she adopted businesses and stuff and bought her own flat when she was 20, from the council, and she did really work hard, which did instill a lot of hard work in me, but good hard work ethic. And then my granddad was the biggest part of my life, an amazing part, and he loved maths, and so in turn I was like absolutely addicted to maths. So maths became like my main thing. So my strategies were all I wanted to be an accountant when I was a child. Very strange thing to be when you're a child.
It is drama,
It is, but I used to beg for sums, and I'd go away and I'd come back and I'd be like, why don't give me more sums? But I liked the structure of my granddad with the maths and stuff. He used to just keep me on a good road, and worked from 13 on a market stall, and I had my own money from 13 years old, and whatever much of a toe rag I was in my teenagers, and who knows what I spent it on. I won't tell you what I spent that money on, but I used to pay my own train fares. I used to get my own clothes and trainers off the market. I really became self-sufficient very young, and I can only thank my mum for making me realise that even if you don't work smart, you work hard. I'm not saying my mum was the smartest worker. She'll agree to me if she hears this. She's not the smartest, but because she's got a bit of a fuddled brain. But she does work hard, and so that did instill a lot in me. And then so I knew, even though I was quite academic in school, I didn't enjoy the school process. I didn't enjoy being in school. I didn't enjoy it. So staying on for my A levels, I didn't feel that was a nice option. So I went to my college prospectus, my local college prospectus, and I sort of was like, okay, well, what's in here? Because I've got okay grades, I'm okay. I've got some A's, got some B's, got some C's. I didn't fail anything, I'm okay. Sciences are good, maths are good. And I was looking, what can I do? And I really didn't know. And then there was this course in aviation that was an aeronautical engineering pre-apprenticeship course, straight from school. So at 16 you can do that. And they paid you to do it. So I was like, okay. So other than getting EMA, which is like when your parents are on low income, you can get £30 a week from the government, which they did in South Wales, because I'm from South Wales. So I don't know if they did it in England, but they did it in Wales. You also got paid £50 a week to go to college by this company, which was Defence Aviation Repair Agency in South Wales, which is part of the RAF.
Yeah.
They would pay you to go. So I did this pre-apprenticeship course. I had to interview for it. I only had that sort of design tech, art, business studies and PE as GCSEs as my main type. So I was thinking, what have I got to help me towards this?
Yeah.
But luckily I did some research and managed to get into this pre-apprenticeship scheme. So that says at 16 ended up in aeronautical engineering.
Yeah.
But Dara went under during that year, so there was nothing to go on to.
Right.
So I always knew, even through my toe rag years, I'll call them, in my teenagers, when I think everyone thought I was going to go off the rails, I always sort of knew, I'm not going to end up this teenage pregnancy sort of South Wales sort of situation, which is really common in South Wales, a lot of places.
Yeah.
But South Wales, I think, has got the highest teenage pregnancy rate of pretty much the UK, I believe. Might be wrong, but I think it's high. It's high.
Yeah.
I knew.
We'll fact check that.
Fact check it, please. But I think it's close to being one of the most. And I always knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to be me. No matter what I did in my years, which was pretty bad, it wasn't going to be me. And I knew that there was going to be something bigger. So when I was looking around at apprenticeships that I could move on to, when I found the Virgin Atlantic apprenticeship, I knew that is what I want.
Yeah.
I want to get out of South Wales, excuse everyone from South Wales, but I want to get out of South Wales. I want to get away and I want something different for myself. And so I went for that interview with every single fibre of my being, an interview, the full works, the suited and booted, the briefcase, the everything at 16 years old. I would have been approaching 17, I was 17 then. And I got in. So I think it was, a lot of people interviewing for that, and we got down to 10 people, and I was the only girl in my year. So I started that at 17, and I moved away from home, away from Wales, and started that down in the southeast. Hence why I'm here.
Yeah.
And hence why I don't sound so Welsh anymore.
Yeah, you don't sound Welsh actually. That's fairly impressive because it's quite a distinct accent, so to say. So how did you go from like that job, I suppose, to where you are now? Like, where's the link between aeronautical engineering and that job, and then deciding
there can be so many links. I think you can be so many links.
Well,
I think if you really
give us the key ones.
The key structure is when you're in aviation, which is obviously an incredibly middle class business. It's incredibly, like, everyone there you would class it as a middle class status.
Yeah.
And everyone is an accidental landlord somehow. Almost everyone.
Yeah.
It's really uncommon to find that someone who hasn't got an extra property because they met their other. I'm using this term really blankly, but another middle class person there that
accidental mum and pops.
Both do middle class things. They bought themselves a property back in the age where we could all afford them on our own, and then they get together. There's an extra property. Everyone has one. So it's one of those things that if you're in this sort of thing, that you will have an extra property floating around, rented out something. So I thought one day I'd have an extra property, because I bought my first property in my apprenticeship when they would lend me lots of money. I was in lots of debt, took lots of debt out to get this property, bought a property but ended up with loads of debt because of it. But I knew that that's a good thing to do.
I assume with the when you're getting all that debt out and the rest of it, your kind of mathematical mind is at one with that, because a lot of people wouldn't be at one with that. I think if you, from just listening to the sort of more chaotic side of my childhood, I didn't have any financial education whatsoever. Nothing. I knew nothing, and I knew a lot of my family just have a bit of debt and stuff like that. So I didn't really know anything about financial education. So I went into something where I was earning okay money as an apprentice, more and more money every year. I knew I was going to go on to decent salary as soon as I was a thing. NatWest would just lend. Sorry, I don't know if I should say NatWest. If a high street bank would just lend into me. So I wasn't being very financially savvy. That was not my financially savvy time. I was lending for all sorts of reasons, and you would call it was bad debt. Yeah. But what I did do in part of that big amount of debt that I ended up in when I was 21 is, with some of that loan money that I took, I did use it as a deposit on my flat. Yeah. Nowhere near enough of it. Back when they were like, they knew what I was doing. They said, we'll say it's for a car. Yeah. And they just gave me more money. Yeah. And I used it as the deposit to buy my first flat when I was 20. Yeah. So I wasn't completely, I want to say retarded about it, but I didn't do good things with the rest of it. So I did spend a lot of my 20s figuring that out. Yeah. Paying off a lot of debt and not, and it would that. And I think during all of that, I was like, something's got to give. I've got to change. I can't just stay in the rat race, shall we call it, of earning good money, but then it's just gone. I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. Yeah. So that was a big change. So having this I got with my ex-partner. He had a property. We had one to rent. So that was the accidental landlord part.
And then I started with get rich dad, poor dad.
Yeah.
Oh, there's other ways. I don't have to be this rat race person in quite a good wage, but stuck in the job where it gets taxed and.
You get that lifestyle inflation. You earn more and you just spend more.
You spend more. And that's literally the highest percentage of people, especially in the middle class range of people. That's like what everyone does. Everyone does it. So I was like, there is another way. So then I started really going down the property education route. Yeah. So I was looking at property education. I was reading all the books. I was like everything I could go to.
So kind of like your Rich Dad Poor Dad courses that they were mentoring.
It wasn't a Rich Dad Poor Dad course, but it was
similar.
Am I allowed to name the company that I went? Yeah, so Progressive Property was who I actually went with. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah, I've heard. There's quite a lot of them to choose from.
It's a huge amount now, and you do have to be careful. I think it's different because this was 2016-17 I was looking at this, and it's very different to now.
Yeah.
You can throw a stone and hit a property educational company, and I do honestly do your homework. Massively do your homework before you join any now. I was naive and excited, and luckily for me, it worked really well. Yeah. And it was. I spent a lot of money. That was my first investment, was into my education with that.
Do you hear stories a lot of people that do these property education things and then they
wasn't any good?
Yeah, because I think that it gets a bad rap sometimes because I think that people think that they pay the money and they're very high fees, some of them, almost the same as going to university for if
all the same as your deposit on your first property.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big commitment. But unless you put the effort in and you do the things, it's a bit like going to uni and going, well, I've paid my 25 grand.
Why are you not just giving me a job?
Yeah, and where did my degree go? You have to put the work in to get the degree, and you have to put the work in to go and get the job at the end. And a lot of people don't. I think they just think they pay the money over, and then there are cases where people have not. Have put effort in and they're not delivering. But as the most part, most people that don't have a good view of them, I think it's where they just put enough effort in. An assumption that it's just going to fall on their lap.
And I absolutely agree. So what I would say is when I joined Progressive Property, I went on a 12-year mentorship VIP, which is not a one-to-one mentorship, it's a group thing. And you do get a one-to-one with your mentor every month, but it is only about 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And you've got to imagine, 45 minutes every month isn't huge. So you are out there doing everything.
Yeah.
But what I drew from massively, and what I cannot say how do I say it? What I would say was the absolute most beneficial thing was I was there every time you went there every month. There was probably 60, 70, 80 people there doing it. So there was different people giving information, and there was just so much going on in the building every month that it was like recharging, because you would deplete all month running around viewings and finding, you're talking to investors and setting up power teams and everything, and you were like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing, and you'd go back and everyone would be doing the same, and you're like, it's okay, do you know, we're all doing the same thing, and it isn't easy. Property is not easy. You need to recharge. You need to chat to somebody and understand that, but please choose wisely with who you're going to go with, what sort of structure of training you're going into, and make sure it's right for you. I did sign up to something recently which didn't feel right to me after I started it, and it did cost me a lot of money. So even that I would say I'm not an expert. I am still just in the business. That's what I am. I shouldn't say I'm not an expert, really, should do. I cannot say I'm an expert on every type of property. No one can. No one can say they're an expert on every single structure of property and strategy of property.
But you know where to go.
I know where to go and get the information. I can go. I've got a really good power team that I'm working with right now. So I'm going to a viewing after this, and I'm going back to a second viewing with a planning consultant, my planning consultant, because I'm not a planning consultant. I'm not an architect. I'm not any of those people. I am the people who bring them together. So you've got to understand when you go into property training that you're not being made to be any of those people, but you're being taught how to connect with those people. You're being taught how to build that structure and team.
Definitely. I think they are massive tools for a lot of people if they're used correctly.
And if you choose the right one for you.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it. Often most of these courses, they do like a 1-day course or even a
3
weekend.
day, yeah,
3
exactly,
day.
and it'll be free or cheaper.
Yeah, and if you run a business already and you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll do this and as a side hustle or something like that, you get all the course fees back. They're tax deductible if you're running it for your business.
Yes you do, yes you do.
So, you know, the fees are slightly lower for those sort of demographic of people, but they're massively motivating. I mean, I went on the Rich Dad Poor Dad one because I kind of just wanted to know that I wasn't missing anything. I never went on the mentoring course, but I paid for the weekend training, and I came away like inspired with a few golden nuggets, but actually almost like inspired because I was like, there's nothing out there that I'm not kind of already doing that fits my remit. There are lots of different schemes, if you like, you could do and the rest of it, but they're not really of interest to me. But the things that I was doing, there wasn't anything that I was missing, and that was like kind of a confidence booster in its own right, really. So I'd definitely recommend that, you know, people look on those courses, see if there are any like freebies or weekend ones or whatever.
I think that's a really good start, definitely.
So Jaimie, I think we'll move on from that to kind of your questionnaire or your sheet that you're submitted. We've kind of covered about what you do, a bit about the business and the rest of it. So we'll kind of try and skip down to the kind of 1 to 10 year type planning that we're looking at. To summarise, I think you've written here in year 1, you want to look at getting all the subsidiaries into a completely different state. Hope to have at least a couple of HMOs completed, which presumably they're ongoing ones at the moment. Hope to have completed the purchase of at least 1 commercial property for development to residential, all our properties moving forward, have a planned new client base. We are in the process of partnering with the social housing, which you've discussed on. So your kind of year 1 goals is really just to finish off what you've got going on now and try and move into that kind of social housing space in a bigger way. And then more longer term goals is really to create at least kind of a target, a KPI of 100 homes.
Individual units, whatever they might be. Beds, let's say places for somebody.
Rooms for people.
It could be a room. It could be a room, 100 properties in 5 years would be, I mean, I'll go for it.
Yeah. Well, you've got to have a goal.
You've got to have a goal.
And I think that
falling short
I say a lot, like people like overestimate what they think they can do in a year, and then they completely underestimate what they do over a long period of time, 10 years or so. And then our home finished in France. I know we haven't touched on it loads, but for the viewers, you live in France.
I do live in France.
Kind of 6 months of the year, roughly speaking.
I mean, you would say it was 6 months of the year because I literally come back and forth every 4 days. So it's roughly. If I take some leave, then I stay in France longer, which obviously I need to for my residency. But
obviously you travel around the world for schooling and stuff like that, and in France. Want to be involved with the social housing provider, and then more longer term things is exponential growth regarding the number of units and really trying to expand on that, like with a potential target of 500, fully hands off regarding day-to-day running the properties and the ability to work wherever you like. Do you think some of the challenges that are going to kind of get in the way, I suppose, in there is missing the family when you're staying in France, coming back and forth? Tiredness when you're travelling around, because obviously that can be quite taxing on the body. And then you mentioned in the kind of chat at the beginning about the
aeronautical engineering.
I wouldn't say aeroplane engineering.
You can say
that sounds aircraft a little bit kindergarten.
Aircraft engineering is a bit simpler.
I guess at some point the focus is, stuff gets too big, you have to kind of prioritise, so maybe looking at moving away from that. So I guess in terms of the sort of initial 1 year targets, I think they're fairly achievable by what you're kind of suggesting here. And I don't know, like you're probably going to say yes to this, but I don't know, do you have like a sort of beginning of the year like plan that you do that you stick to or anything? Do you write stuff down, like your goals or anything?
I am a huge planner, and I expect everybody to do it.
I don't know why I thought you would be.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? Yeah, no, I'm a huge planner.
It's the mathematician in
so it could be. So I'm not it might surprise you that I'm not as rigid and as in a Gantt chart plans person. I'm not. I would love to be, but I'm not. I am a little bit more like I make a plan of what I want to achieve, and I go and I get it done.
Yeah.
It's not like I've got a Gantt chart for each month. I've got this.
Yeah.
I really, I think as I'm growing, as I'm becoming more structured in my new way moving forward, I am going to probably get a little bit more structured in my KPIs and what I do, how many viewings I do, how many offers I make, and things like that. At the moment, and what I have been previously, is I just go out and I do it and I get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always got a list of plans for my year, 5 year, 10 year.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay.
And I always look back on those, and when you do look back on those, it's actually quite scary.
Yeah.
It's scary what you've forgotten, you've written down, what you've achieved.
What you've missed and what you have achieved.
Absolutely insane.
Where you've gone off focus as well.
Yeah.
So I suppose the point of the long term, the kind of immediate focus goal is so that you don't go off on those tangents. So I would suggest that if you can try and stick to that as much as possible, that'll help you focus. But interestingly for me, the kind of long-term goal of obviously upscaling where you are at the moment, so that you can get it into a bit position where you're not working so much in the business, you're working more on it. Through partnerships and so on, obviously you've got kind of independent landlord or investors, if you like, supporting you through JV or through angel investing or just loan agreements or whatever. I guess if you could find some sort of partnership with the council or this social housing, that's going to be beneficial. And I know from time to time in the history they have actually funded or part funded some of these developments. So there was a big drive to repurpose like unused buildings and the rest of it, and they were giving really big grants and stuff like that. I don't know if they have that at the moment, but obviously we've got budget coming up and a new government, and it may be that they always have a drive towards that. So it'd be definitely a good idea to keep an eye out, see if there are any repurposed housing stock, if you like, because there's so much commercial property that could be turned into residential.
Well, exactly.
Or in Brighton they've got those like shipping containers, and they put those into various things. So, and I think the council part funded that, or at least were involved in some kind of loan scheme. So, I'd really try and keep your eyes out for those, because they're not very good at marketing, the council. They don't shout about their offers. No, they do.
You do really have to be in it, and I think that's where your power team comes into it as well, because the people you're working with, and when you talk about power team, obviously I'm sure most people listening to this know what a power team is, but it's people you work with like recurring?
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah.
Recurringly? Repeatedly.
Yeah.
You work with somebody repeatedly, and they become part of your sort of power team. That doesn't mean they're in your business. I don't want anyone to think I'm out there with this massive business of all these people. They are people you work alongside, that you work with repeatedly to do that. And
you've got your lender and
your lenders and your planning consultants and your QS, and I've always obviously have the same accountant.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might ship around for brokers, or you might ship around maybe your solicitor, can be quite specific. So you need a different solicitor for different purchases or different loan agreements. But you find your people. You find your people that work on your cost basis, on your professionality, and that on a time basis, people that actually reply to you. That's always so important.
With your power team, just a bit of advice for other people. I don't know if you do this at all, but a lot of people have a power team, but they take the advice of their immediate power team, and that's it, kind of like, that's what my accountant said and that's it. Well, I think it's perfectly healthy for you to have like almost like an outer ring of power circles, so that you've got someone to reference. I mean, I'm sure there's times where you've gone to your solicitor or your accountant, they've given you some advice, and you're kind of, in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm not sure if that was right or not. So like having an actual outer ring or an option B, if you like, as your wider power team is something I think as you grow is definitely something you would need if you haven't already have that. Yeah. Just, it's healthy, and your A option, your current power team, they shouldn't be offended if you say, I understand what you're saying, I'm just going to go and seek some advice, because like solicitors are typical, like one specialises in like, conveyancing, but they might not specialise in like commercial aspects, or
Exactly,
maybe shareholder agreements and stuff like that. So that they can only do so much. They're only humans. So it's good to have like a wider power team, I think, as you've got like an option B to go to.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I find that, well, you know, we met at a networking event, and that obviously when you sponsor, and I found when you go to things like that, these are amazing places to meet those people, because when I'm going to these places more to build a network a little bit, but you know, it's nice to have that social talk to the business owner, see what they're doing, and you find, even though you have your power team that you directly go to, and I've met a lot of them in those spaces, in those networking events, but you find other people that do the same job, and you feel like you're cheating on them a little bit by chatting to this person, but they might have something really really good to say that they think differently. So I totally agree that you should never be afraid to go and chat to someone else. The only thing I would say is that I'm really funny about is when you're finding your broker for lending, you know, you can waste a lot of broker time very easily, because brokers do a lot of work before they even bring you any figures. And what I'd say is, if you find, and I'm different brokers do different things. Obviously, you know this isn't for you, this is for anyone listening. Different brokers do different things. You have to be really specialised in whatever type of lending you're going to, and be really specific. So you have multiple brokers, but they might have an opinion on other type of lending you might not have thought of. Could be right, could be wrong. But try and use different brokers for advice, but not waste too much of their time, obviously, if you're not going to use them. It's
also, I mean, we have a fairly good working relationship directly with HSBC. So we have, because of the volume we turn over, they appoint us a business development manager. Now, I think that you're right with the brokers, like you'll get the ones that are really good at buy-to-let, and ones that are good at bridging loans, or maybe they might be the same
development
person.
finance for these commercial
exactly. Or ones that are like, it's just complicated and it doesn't fit in our risk profile of the lenders we've got access to. You might go to somebody else where they're like, it does fit in our risk profile. And then having a direct relationship with the bank as well, like we do. It's not in your space, but acquisitions of other businesses, they love funding it, HSBC, when you've got a freehold property and a trading business in it.
Inside,
that's like literally,
of course, protection,
but you've got to go and work out like what their risk is. So like, I'll go for a lunch with them and I'll be like, so what's the flavour of the month to this? If they've done too much of that, they'll be like, we don't really want to do that anymore, we've got too much of that on our books, so we're now shifting towards here. And having those tools to hand is like gold dust for when you're trying to grow a portfolio or invest.
What this reminds me of, what you're saying, is you're working with HSBC like I work with my investors, because you're sat with HSBC, which obviously seems a little bit wacky to me right now, sitting with the bank and having this conversation. You can do that in France, by the way. In France, you can literally go and sit with the bank and have this conversation. I do it often. But in the UK, it's bank says no, the group says no. So this is the way I work with my investors. I sit and have a conversation. What is it you want? What is it we can do? I'm not a set structure. I can be really fluid, and property can be really fluid, and everything can be managed in such a weird way. So what you're saying you do with HSBC, I'm not. I don't think I feel like, maybe that's an imposter syndrome thing. I don't feel like I'm at the space to go and have a chat with a bank here and that freely. But that's how I chat with my private investors.
But I think if you can speak to HSBC, like I can make an introduction to our business manager. They have like a remit of like turnover or assets or something like that, but they can turn some blind eyes to things if you don't quite meet those things. So I could definitely make an introduction.
Why not?
to
I mean,
Paul.
can't hurt.
They might be able to assist with that, and that's a good way of dealing directly with the bank and getting the flavour for things. I suppose the main goal for you, like the long-term thing, is to get to a position where you're working on your business, not in the business, which will allow you to be a bit more in France, or have the freedom to do as you please, I suppose. I don't know. I think if you can get like the government grants and work efficiently and have that cookie cutter approach to the social housing stuff, have all of those arms to your artillery, your power team and the wider power team, then there isn't any reason why you can't then make that move to getting somebody on the ground here in the UK to do that for you. Employment is inherently difficult, making sure you've got the right person, especially if you're working remotely. It has to be a special kind of person that you're going to be able to leave on their own and they're going to perform. Set them some KPIs, definitely, because you need to monitor that they're actually doing that. And to be honest, to start with, it will probably feel like it's more work than it was because you'll spend all your time monitoring them. Are they turning up? Are they doing this? Do they have the same level of passion as me? Because you know, they're going to go to a networking event and be like, I know my conversation today is going to end up in making you more money. And if they don't feel like okay at one with that, then that sort of person loses that motivation, or they leave and do the thing themselves because they're kind of almost self-training. But I do think those people exist. You have to kiss a few frogs.
They need to be well compensated, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is what I'd like to do,
Make sure that they you know, the perfect person, I think, in your industry is actually someone that's done it and it's failed. So they respect what you're doing, but they know they don't want to go and do it again. So if you've got a landlord or an investor of some nature that's been burned because it's all collapsed around them, they're like, I love this industry and I know it. And maybe someone that's a bit older than you that's like, I don't want to do it all over again, but I want to make sure you do well. You know, those are the sort of best people, I think.
That's an interesting
on paper you think, oh, your business flops, so therefore, you know, I've got some people that work for me that we bought their businesses and they just wanted a job. They just didn't want to do it anymore. They were like, I can't make it make money. It's really hard.
I do understand.
I'm working for minimum wage, but I respect what you do, Matt, like, and how hard it is and the rest of it. But I just wanted my life back.
I just want to leave and not have the stress, because there's never a day, is there? When you're a business owner, there's never a minute that you don't wake up and go, I need to check my emails. I need to. You know, I do try and make that distinction between when I'm in the UK and when I'm in France. I do try and make it that when I'm in the UK working, I'm here working. And, you know, I'm really, really lucky that my husband and my daughter, they got on pretty well without me. I mean, very well, you know, ridiculously well. And mummy's away and that's fine. And mummy's working 4 days. She's all in. And then I go back to France and I'm like, this is my really quality time. It's not to say I don't do anything when I'm in France, because of course I can pick up emails and do what I need to do. But when I'm there and I'm present and I'm mum. And then when I'm here, I am, you know, JLH Homes. I'm the aircraft engineer. I'm doing my networking. I'm doing my business. I'm doing my viewings. I'm doing everything here. So there's definitely that sort of, I can pick it up and put it down. But when you're here, it's stressful. It's hard. There's never a minute it's not on you. You know, and you can get it at all levels as well. You know, all levels. I'm dealing the commercial property that I'm going to see now, and a planning consultant, and I'm trying to answer messages. Or I've got a tenant calling me about a shower that's not working. You know, it's not easy.
To find though that person or people that are going to build that network so that you're working on the business, not in it, is going to be a stressful process for you because. There's a lot of lending involved, there's a lot of stake on the line here, but I think if you can find that right person, maybe the person exists on one of those property courses and they've kind of given it a go. They maybe got 3 buy-to-lets and it's not really, you know, snowballing as they wanted.
They're just not sure about the
those
direction.
people are probably perfect, and also I find that those sort of people, they might not have had like a financial education or background growing up, but they have definitely a school of life about them, which is just as important. I mean, we don't teach financial education in schools in the UK.
And it's horrendous.
But those people will have a good figure for numbers. I mean, like mathematics and stuff like that. So they'll understand the kind of dynamics of what you're doing here, that you're kind of borrowing it from here to fund this, and you've got JV people, you've got to make good on your loans and all the rest of it. And the worst thing you do is not pay them back. And
don't do that. Don't do that.
That's like 101 in
Absolutely.
investing.
First thing you ever do is you never let your investors down.
Exactly, because they'll never come back again.
No.
And I think if you can source that person, then they're really going to help you.
I like it.
They'll stay with you, hopefully, and then as you introduce more people as the business grows, because the 500 is a lot, but I think once you get going with it, it does accelerate a lot. I mean,
it's what happened last time.
You must
just
have
sort of snowballed, you know.
So we're in the southeast here, and there's a landlord here, Coastal, who we do quite a lot of work with, and they actually got themselves to a size where they were bigger than Brighton and Hove Council in terms of being a private landlord. From mothballing or snowballing, so not mothballing, that's the other way, snowballing, all of this kind of lending, and I mean, they're very clever gentlemen to have got to where they are. But yeah, it really started accelerating. And if you look at your own journey as well, and even mine, you know, I started with like one buy-to-let, then kind of used the income to just subsidise my own mortgage, basically. I didn't really know what I was doing with it. And then over time,
it just
kind
happens,
of
isn't it? And then you learn there's cleverer ways.
Yeah. I mean, we don't use it anymore just because we bought another bit of software, but we used a bit called Landlord for a while. And it actually tracks what you paid for it, what it's worth now, what you've done in the mortgage sense, as long as you put the data in. And then you can see what your equity is in terms of what you've got from growth. Your portfolio might be worth £5 million, but actually you only put in like, I don't know, 1.5 million in order to get to that.
Exactly.
And therefore the rest of it the increase isn't because you've added it from the refurbishing it. It's actually from the growth, over time, because compounding interest, you know, and prices go up. So they're quite interesting tools to use, and they give you like a bit of motivation in order to keep going. Like if you're looking at that kind of bottom line figure, really.
Of course, yeah, all the time.
Because as you grow, you'll get more sophisticated and larger investors that are willing to do it. And I think those conversations with the bank is probably where you end up, because even if you go people like we do a bit with Bridgewater Finance and various, and Handelsbanken we've been talking with as well, and they kind of fund certain things, but they're funding them in like a big way. We're not talking like someone lending you 100,000 or 200. These are lending you like £1 million, you know.
See, that's I would call that medium investment.
Yeah.
£1 million, you know, that's a medium. That's the sort of the medium thing, isn't it? Because there's the smallest of them, 700,000. I think you are looking at sort of slightly less sophisticated investors at that level that want to work with you a little bit more, want more from their equity, and then as soon as you get the over 500,000 up to maybe 5 million, I'd call that like medium investment. Yeah. And then you've got to group it together and get big if you're going to go up to the 50 million. I mean, it's a big jump.
I think you need to get into that medium. I don't know how much.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I agree. It is medium. Yeah, it's medium space.
Get into the medium space, as you call it.
I find that's
with some of the banks as well. Like HSBC will be in that medium space, very much so. And as long as you're putting some skin in the game somewhere, then they're really into that. And you build that relationship with them. They've funded a number of acquisitions of ours. We've had. We work with Bridgewater. I mean, they did this building that we're in now.
I did notice the building we're in. Yeah.
Yeah. So they we found it hard to get lending on it, and then they stepped in just because of one of the commercial units had a funny type of lease on it, and they're normal kind of less not high street, but a high street bank type people would get a bit nervous about it.
Yeah, of course they do. That's what I mean. So. The HSBC will work around those things.
Bridgewater.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's more like private financing, I suppose.
Yeah,
but they're a big company. They do like that medium space, if you like, 5 million down. HSBC will do anything as long as the figures stack up.
Of course they do.
I wouldn't say they've got unlimited pots, but
I mean it's pretty limited in our space, isn't it? Yeah.
Fairly limited. So so I think kind of the key takeaways, if you like, for the audience and for yourself is really to look for those relationships with the council, see if there's any grants available, try and build upon those things. And then when we get to that point where you're kind of accelerating and you need that employee, those feet on the ground all the time, do look for that kind of demographic of person, I think, because they're the ones that you can trust the most.
Yeah, no, I do like it. Someone who's got the property education, just not got the grunt out there.
They kind of had maybe one of the batteries taken out of them or something.
The poor person, if they ever watch this podcast back, when after the first person, they go, well, sorry, the person with the battery taken out of me.
Well, it's soul destroying, isn't it? You build this big business up and you've got like, I don't know, £5 million worth of property, and then you lose it all. Or, you know, financial crash people will probably, I bet you there's somebody out there that in 2008, 2009 lost it all, spent a couple of years kicking the can down the road, then has probably worked a corporate job for 10 years and is probably thinking, do you know what, I'm 52 now and I want to go somewhere where I can make a difference and help somebody, you know, and
that's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, like I always say, I couldn't go and work for someone anymore. Like I'm unemployable. Yeah. But I think when I'm like 60, I could probably work for someone who I felt like, I'm like, oh, you look like a younger version of me. I want to help you. even though I don't need the money or anything at all, I want to see you do well. So that demographic of person, I think, would be a good
Well, if you
recruit
find
for
one for me, Matt, do pass them along. I say him, it shouldn't be a him, it could be it could be a her. It could be a philanthropist female, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think do that, and that will allow you to not be in the UK so much, or have that kind of time a bit more that you're after, and work on the business and not in it. But yeah, definitely the funding stuff is going to be key to getting you there.
I know,
then looking for those people on the ground, because if you get a really good team around you, then kind of world's your oyster really, because you can spend all your time planning and strategizing, not doing viewings and hunting around and the rest of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, I hope that's been really useful.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good bit.
It's a really nice kind of story about how you got to where you are now and the rest of it, and hopefully those tips. I know you kind of know what you're doing and in that space and the rest of it, but hopefully some of those things.
No, that was good. It was good. Thank you.
Useful.
I appreciate that.
I don't know if you had any kind of questions at the end here at all, or anything you wanted to ask that we haven't touched on.
No, I think the only thing that me and you, I think, were really in agreement on was the fact how minimal financial education there is in the system. That's not really anything to do with my business, but other than the fact that I came from having quite a lot of consumer debt at one point and had to pay it all off, and really learn how to manage my money and learning to invest. And I think if I could try and help anybody understand the power of investment and how important it is, I would love that.
What would your key tips be? Like, if you could give 3 short key tips on, like, kind of, because we don't do financial education, not really.
We don't.
In the
There's
UK.
nothing. It's appalling.
You're very much kind of born of your upbringing, really. So,
and in fact, they actually push debt.
Yeah.
I would say our financial education is more around, you can go and get a debt on a car. You can go and, don't ever pay off a car, it's fine, don't worry about it. You can get credit cards really easy, overdrafts. We're actually born of just, debt is normal, aren't we? That's normal.
What would your key tips for the viewers be? Like, personally, I mean, they've heard it from me hundreds of times, probably on the other videos that we do and the rest of it, but
honestly,
you got any key tips?
I wouldn't like to say that I'm a professional in this. It's not like I don't have any consumer debt. It's not like I don't have a credit card. Of course I do, because we all have to splash into it now and again. But just making sure you understand the power of the compounding of either way. When you have a credit card, when you're paying off the interest and you're never paying off the balance, if you really were to work out how much you're spending on that, can you just take a year really focusing on that and getting that gone? And then if the money you're putting into that, if you were to then just put that into a compound interest account, high interest compound interest account, or if you were clever enough to pop it into some shares or something and just keep doing that, the difference that will make to your life long term. Because everyone thinks they've got to have it now, and everyone looks at me like, oh, how far are you going to go, Jaime? And I'm like, I'll go as far as I need to be financially free. Financially free enough to make my choices on my daily basis as much as I want to. That's how far I'll go. So I would say one of the biggest tips is just managing, even no matter how little money you have, try and manage the debt away, and then just make really little, if it's only little, if that's all you can do.
I've just thought of something. I have like a golden nugget of information in that space of what you were talking about. So I
saw your brain go.
It did, yeah. So I went to the networking event that we met at actually on Friday. And
I went to the London one. I missed the Friday one this week. I was gutted.
And a fairly well-educated person, I was talking to them. Like, I respect them, and they're not. They're not a silly person at all, but they were talking about replacing their car, and they probably know who they are, but I'm not going to mention their name if they watch this video. They had a Tesla, and they bought it in like on a lease plan thing, these ones where you pay like a lump sum up front and then you kind of rent it and then hand it back. There's no option to buy.
Oh, okay. Just a lease, pure lease.
Yeah, pure lease, and it was like nearly £1,000 a month. And because the Teslas were expensive in like 2019 or whenever he got it out. And he was looking at replacing the car, and he was like, oh, I can get one now where it's only like £350 a month, where I can get the next model down, or maybe the equivalent, or I could look at this Porsche and it was only £200 a month from what I was spending now. And he was also talking about his pension, so he was having the conversation with his wife about, should I put more in my pension or should I have the nicer car, but like, I'm not going to want it forever, and I'm 50 now and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I know people talk a lot about like the cost of a Starbucks and don't waste your money and all that kind of stuff. But I was saying to him, like, the true cost of your Porsche isn't like the difference between the £400 a month and the £1,200, because that's like 800 quid. Because if you take that £800, put it in your pension, and it doubles over the next 10 years when you get to 60. So your true cost is actually £1,600 difference between that.
Or if you invest that money and do anything with it.
He literally was like, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah,
and I'm
if you
thinking
don't think
these are
about
quite
money.
well, you know, educated people, but they didn't. He had not thought.
He's just
that
thinking about that
these
literal amount
saving-
leaving his account every month. Whereas if you've got to think about what can I do with that money.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the power of the compounding interest.
But this is
really.
something that nobody thinks about because no one's taught it. No one's taught it by anybody.
And I know there's the school of thought if it could be dead tomorrow or whatever.
There is.
So
But you can
have
still
to
have a perfectly
balance.
nice car.
Yeah.
Because I drive a 10 years old, perfectly nice car that I'm happy to drive around in. I don't drive around in a really shoddy old thing that's going to not start on me. It's still a perfectly nice high brand car that I paid under 10 grand for, and it drives lovely and it does its thing, but I don't have monthly payments. I don't have any of that. I'm not saying that's how everyone should be. I'm just saying I'm more than happy with that, because all of my money I would prefer to go into my future investment, and I want to put a backpack on when Devon's 10, my daughter, and I want us to all put a backpack on and go off for a year and not be seen and not worry about it. So do I want payments? Do I want, but that's for me, because that's what I want.
Everyone's risk
Everyone's
profile is
different. Everyone's different, but that's what. So it just depends on how you look at that money and what else you could do with it.
Okay. Well, it's been brilliant having you on today.
Thank you so much.
I mean, personally, I'd love to do a JV review at some point if one
Yeah,
ever
okay,
comes up.
cool.
So
Well,
reach
let's
out
chat
to
about
us,
that.
and I'll put you in touch with Paul as well. That would probably be a good intro straight into the bank rather than through brokers as well for you, just as another avenue. And it'd be brilliant to have you on another time, maybe in a year's time.
See how we're getting on. An update. Oh God, don't. That'd be terrifying.
Have you actually committed and got to your near your
Yeah, I
goal?
hope so. I'm hoping to commit this afternoon, so we'll see. I've got a second viewing on a commercial space, so we'll see. Maybe I've committed.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very
so much.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
Take care.